All right, let's talk about voles. Cute little furry things. Uh, they are very, very productive. Um, Voles they can breed during the winter, they can breed during the spring, summer, and fall. They have adults have 5 litters a year or more, 3 to 6 young per litter, so you can see why they can really build up populations quickly. The damage that voles cause is usually damage from girdling trees, but the biggest problem is those runways they make in the lawn. During the winter, they're under that snow and they're moving around and they're feeding. And the little runways that they make, they're eating some of that grass, but the biggest problem is the urine and the feces that's in those runways makes it very difficult for grass to get reestablished. And it will reestablish in one season. This is probably one of those animals that you have to ask people, is it really a problem? What happens is the spring, the snow melts, and they see all this stuff on their lawn and think, oh, this is just terrible. Look at all this stuff. They've got mice all over the place. Well, what they have are these voles, and this dead grass that's all matted down, really just within a few weeks when the grass starts coming up, will be covered, especially if you rake it up. So sometimes they get real frustrated because voles are hard to control because they see a mess like this. But it can be a problem on some lawns and certainly on golf courses. But in just a couple weeks, it starts plugging up and covering up, and it'll be repaired by the end of the year. However, when you have voles and you're in a turf grass situation or golf course or some lawns, there's just so many of them, it's a mess. Probably one of the things we have to add with voles that's very important is persistence. Try a bunch of different methods, keep after it. If for no other reason, their populations are very cyclic, and if you keep working on them for a few years, before long there'll just be a dip in the population cycle, and you'll think that you did a good job because you don't have as many of them, and it's just a natural cycle that occurs sometimes. So in addition to persistence, we look at all these other things that we want to consider. Habitat modification is best done if you understand they live under the mulch. They live down under that grass. They live down deep. And so for you to get rid of their habitat, you need to think of removing everything above that. You got to remove that cover that they have. Just as a little aside, I should mention, there's probably nothing that teams up quicker than a vole. For a lot of these pictures, I just had caught one in a live trap, and then I put it in a box and fed it apples for 15 minutes, and next thing you know, you can pick them up. They're just, and I'm not recommending this. Somebody gets bit, they can have a problem, but I've never seen them be at all aggressive. They're kind of nice little animals. However, we do have to get rid of them in some cases. So we remove the cover. Tilling, cutting the grass real short, even burning the grass in the fall. This is sometimes ways to keep them from getting out on that lawn. This is a real good idea to do around the garden because sometimes they do get into gardens and eat on everything from leafy products like lettuce or even spinach and things like that. But they also will start girdling roots of other plants as they start coming up. But if you open the area up like this, they don't like having to go across that big open area. They'll just stay back in the area that's more suitable vole habitat, and it really can eliminate the problem. Again, a barrier around the garden that's tight, especially if it's a raised garden, can be beneficial. They could climb it easily, but it's just something that can be a bit of a deterrent for them. Cutting the grass short is really something people should consider. And I know the turf grass people will tell me, well, there's an optimum length of grass that you need to leave there in the fall of the year, so you don't want to cut it too short. So again, you're weighing one problem with another consideration, and cutting the grass short, it might not be the best thing for you to do, but it is a way to keep the voles from going across an area if the grass is real short.
There we go.
Okay,
That picture was like
so this is advancing now. All right. Okay, so we're back in business. So in addition to the habitat modification, the next thing we want to look at are some cultural things. Not really much you can do there because the cultural things are just involving things that would really be covered under habitat modification. Again, exclusion, if you've got trees that are being girdled, little seats, saplings and so forth, they do make guards that you can put around the trees, a real fine mesh, and those really do work well if you get them down into the ground. You can't just put them flat on the ground or on top of some mulch, or the voles will get under them very easily. You know, they say to put them down in the ground at least 2 or 3 inches, but if you can get them at least an inch in the ground so that the voles going along the surface will encounter them, they'll work pretty good there. So those barriers can work pretty good. This is the one barrier that somebody tried. I showed you this photo before. And when the snow was on the ground deeper, the voles would go underneath the snow and they would encounter this barrier, and then they didn't get out on the fairways here on this golf course. Some other things that can be done to prevent the voles from moving under the snow. Some golf courses have put cross-country ski trails right along the edge of their more rangeland looking areas where there was a lot of meadow vegetation in their fairways. And when the voles go along underneath the snow and bump into those, they don't go any further. A snowmobile certainly can pack the snow down and do the same thing. All of these have to be done continuously. The voles don't like to come on top of the snow and run around at all. But if there's layers of snow, they will come up into the upper layers to get over a packed area. So anytime you get more snow, you need to repack it. But that does work pretty good to pack the snow to keep the voles from moving. And that's probably the only kind of exclusions that I can think of. Repellents and devices and scaring devices, there are some that are labeled, and like in a garden or some ornamentals, they do work, but they're not practical in that they have to be reapplied almost every time it rains. And but they do, in research that has been conducted, they did not damage those plants that had the fungicide on it, and one called Mr. T's Mole Out did the best. And they work good. Ultrasonic devices, again, forget them. They're ultrasonic devices that have just not proven to be effective in any kind of wildlife damage control. So they certainly don't work with the voles either. Control methods, removal. Again, you're talking about something generally under the snow, but sometimes during the summer they can be controlled. And just plain old snap traps, mouse traps can work pretty good. The nutty peanut butter base works good. Because of the population of voles, you usually have to have numerous traps. We recommend using what we call game traps, where you mount the traps on a board or put them in a box, and you have several of them there. Because if you catch one vole, it seems like that attracts other ones, and you will catch more of them. So we use several traps at once. The traps can be set right along the runways, right across the runways, so that they encounter them. Some people have had luck just putting them there without any bait on them, and when the voles run across them, they get caught. But putting bait on them kind of gets them both ways. You can make a trap box, especially if you're doing this under the snow, and put the traps inside the box, and then you can access them from the surface so that you don't have to deal with covered traps. And they do work good. I mean, almost every time you check them, you'll catch voles. The question is, are you getting the population down far enough to reduce the damage that they do during the winter? Is it getting low enough to be sufficient? Under the snow, we've had pretty good luck making travel ways where you would use PVC pipe that you drill a 3/4 inch hole in. When that's under the snow, the voles that encounter that will go into that hole and then follow that to a place either where you have some toxic bait placed or into a box that's got traps in it. And those really do work real well. It's surprising how much of an area you can cover, and any voles that encounter that are going to investigate it. And so these under snow access pipes work real well. There are poisons that are labeled for vole control. Some of them are single lethal dose, and some of them are multiple dose, the anticoagulant baits. There's some of them are labeled for broadcasting. Obviously, you would do that when there's not snow on the ground, when it's real dry, and that they will encounter those and they'll die from that. You can hand place it in the runways. You get down on the grass and you can see where their runways are. And if you put some of the poison there, they'll take that. Using bait boxes works good, and using the bait stations made with the 1.5-inch PVC pipe also works real good. These were designed to be used under the snow. That part that stands up pokes above the snow and has a cap on it, and the poison grain is put down in that, and that's the reservoir. And then the voles encounter this and go through these holes and go get the poison grain and then come back out the holes, and they die of that. And again, they've had pretty good luck. Some of this seems pretty sophisticated, but for some of the golf courses is where this has been developed, where they really don't want to have a couple weeks or a month of scars on the surface from the voles. And that's how it's used. It just sits up straight under the snow. And it's propped up using some kind of a rod of some kind to make it stand up. And then they just have to be refilled all winter long while they're underneath the snow, filled with the poison grain. And all winter long they'll be doing their work. And like the other bait stations that we talk about, these have to be kept filled, because if they go through a period of time where there's no bait in there, they won't be dying from the anticoagulant bait. Okay, let's look at some of the show and tell things that we have. If we could put that on camera too. All right, when we're controlling voles, there's several different things. These are the traps we're talking about, and this is what a game trap looks like. You can put 3 traps, or you can put 5, or several on there. Any kind of a mouse snap trap works good. They're starting to make all different kinds that are easier to set and quicker, and everybody's trying to find a better mouse trap. And some of them do work better than others. If you're using a bait station of some kind, if you're using a box of some kind, you just cut the little holes in it, put it over the top. Even during the summer or fall when you're trapping, you can use something like this, and it'll keep birds and other things out of there, and the voles will quickly explore those holes, so that works good. There's also commercially made stations that you can either put the poison grain in again, or you can put the traps in there. That works good. One thing I didn't talk about was the multiple catch traps. These are designed so that when the vole goes into the trap, there's a little kicker that will spin around and toss them into a little storage place. And these multiple catch traps work good because you can catch 12 to 20 voles in this thing. Getting them to go there is what's key. Can you put that camera on the number 3 thing? Yeah, there you go. This is the PVC bait stations that we were talking about that you put under the snow. And these are designed so that you put them down in the ground, you prop them up, and then you can put the grain in through the tops of these caps during the winter time. This also is a way that you can set up a system to get the voles to go into one of these traps, one of the boxes that have the traps. You do the same thing, except this PVC pipe that's got the holes in it is now directing them into the area where you have the traps. That'll work. Likewise, if you have the catch-all traps, the multiple traps that you're using, you can put these right up against the hole that they go into to get into the catch-all trap. So these are all different things that can be considered as ways to control the voles.